It's over. The Mets season has come to a crashing halt as they will miss the playoffs after a whimpering 4-0 loss to the Marlins on the final day of the regular season. The Brewers beat the Reds today, but it did not even matter for the Mets. I am Adam Choit, your host for today here on Mets Digest, and before we dig in on all that, I just want to give you guys a quick heads up, a quick reminder to please subscribe, because as you can see, nearly 68% of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed. So please take a quick second to do that. It is appreciated for sure. Thank you. So let's get into it. Let's have a therapy session. Let's hug it all out. Let's express our emotions and dig in on what went wrong for the 2025 New York Mets. What a sad way to end the season today. Whimpering is the appropriate word, and I'm sure I'll continue to be using that. One of the most disappointing years that the Mets have ever suffered through their 64-year history. That was Gary Cohen at the end of the broadcast earlier today, and I definitely agree with that. I have been around for the majority of those seasons now at this point, and definitely up there, right there with 07, 08, in terms of disappointments and collapses. This was a unique one in the regard that there was a slow burn, a 4-month collapse since the middle of June, and we'll dig in more on that momentarily. Here's the season in a nutshell. The 7th line here, capturing a screen capture from Alvarez's strikeout during the game there. I grabbed the screen capture of that, just the frame there. We all felt that definitely in a clutch at bat where the Mets had opportunities. Alvarez did not get it done, and neither did the 2025 New York Mets. The Mets are 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position in a do-or-die game to save their season. Embarrassing. The old trouble came back to plague them. They struggled, of course, in the first half with hitting in runners in scoring position in those situations, and it came back to burn them in the end. But it really was not. It's not about this last game. This last game is not the reason, or not the only reason, the Mets did not make the playoffs, and I'll get more into that momentarily as well. What went wrong? Here you go. Here's Steve Cohen saying if we don't win a World Series in 3 to 5 years, that would be disappointing. Well, we are disappointed. He is disappointed. Or as you can see from the date there, 11/10/2020. 5 seasons have been played since this quote. 2 playoff appearances. That's Mike 5_5_5 with the post there on X. Just to give you a sense of where we are in the Steve Cohen ownership. There's been a lot of positives, of course, and 2 playoff appearances in 5 years is better than 0 playoffs appearances in 5 years. But given where this team, where expectations are and were, and even set by fans and the owner, as you can see, it's ultimately a disappointment. And, the biggest reason you would call this a disappointment is, of course, the insane payroll that the Mets have and not making the playoffs. And an expanded playoff field is definitely hugely disappointing. Carlos Mendoza was asked if he's concerned about his future in the Mets organization. When you're managing a team that has a lot of expectations and you go home, questions like this are going to come up. That's part of it. I'll get into Andy Martino's report that he expects the Mets to retain Carlos Mendoza. Much more on that coming. Of course, things can change. But the early news and reporting is that Carlos Mendoza will be back. We'll definitely have a lot more on that story, and there's that ongoing story here on Mets Digest as we move forward in the coming days and weeks, certainly. It's beyond frustration. It's just straight up disappointing. There's no way to sugarcoat a super talented team, and the reality is we fell short. We didn't even get to October. That's Pete Alonso reflecting on the Mets missing the postseason. SNY, of course, right there. You can see. Yeah, I mean, this is statistically what went wrong. Beatty Bomb here replying to Jared Diamond. He grabbed this image from SNY. The Mets since June 13th, 38-55. That's the 26th best record in baseball. 4.18 runs per game. That's actually the 6th best in baseball since that time. And here, as you can see below that, the starting pitcher ERA 5.27 and the relief pitching ERA 4.60. The biggest culprit is certainly the starting pitching. Not them exclusively. There were many other reasons why the team did not ultimately go nearly as far as they wanted to. But starting pitching, I think I would put at the top of that list. I mean, you could say injuries, mental errors, physical errors, bad managing choices by Mendoza certainly throughout the season. Stanek was not a good pitcher this season at all. Finished with an ERA over 5. One must ask though how much the starting pitching being stressed put on the arms of put extra stress on Stanek pitching, but there's no excuse and there's no reason for the talent that him and the rest of the Mets have to perform as poorly as they did. Stanek has solid above average stuff and a great arm. He should not have an ERA over 5. Not to blame Ryan Stanek for the season entirely. The Mets really lost this as a team. I was watching the SNY post game, and there's just plenty of blame to go around. There's not really one finger, one person, one area of the team that you can entirely blame everything on. There's blame to go on the manager's shoulders. There's blame to go on David Stearns' shoulders. There's, of course, the majority of the blame to go on the shoulders of the players just for simply not executing more than anything beyond just injuries and things like that. They just not execute when they needed to. They didn't execute when they needed to, and they did not play good enough baseball to make the playoffs. But yes, they were overall during this season, the Mets finished in the top half in runs scored and the bottom half of runs allowed. So where's that going to go? That's going to go on the pitching and defense too, to some degree as well. I'm sure the team is going to be diving to those metrics and what went wrong and exploring what can be changed. There's definitely going to be changes coming. There's going to be big changes coming. We'll have to wait and stay tuned to see what those are. Let's dig into a little bit more of the reaction from the Mets. Epically disappointing 2025 season. Hope everyone is hanging in there out there for sure. The Mets were short on pitching and defense, period. There isn't a stat for choking on Baseball Savant, so my point is improvable, but I didn't see a lot of what looked like a choke job. In the end, the team simply failed to prevent runs well enough. They didn't have enough pitching or even close, and they might have squeaked into the postseason with better defensive personnel. That's Andy Martino, and that all makes a lot of sense. Certainly, they just did not. They didn't execute, and there's again plenty of blame to go around. They lost, and they failed as a team in 2025. Oop, let me go back to where we were. Oop, there we go. This is. Yep. Let's get into a little bit of the future here. What will happen with Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, and other stars? It is entirely possible that both stars will opt out. That both stars with opt-outs play their final game as a Met on Sunday. These situations could go either way. Obviously, there are Mets officials who would make an internal case to spread their money around on players other than a 30-something first baseman and closer. Buckle up for more Alonso free agent uncertainty. And would the Mets go as far as to explore a trade market for stalwarts Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo? You can rest assured that the team's leadership will reflect as deeply as possible on how to keep the Mets pointed in the right direction. That is certainly a lot to chew on right there. Trading Lindor and Nimmo, oh man, are we trying to get clicks or what? I don't know. I think trading Lindor is a little bit nuts, a little bit out there to say the least. Of course, I'm hopeful that the Mets retain all 4 of those players, and through they had successful seasons, even though some of those names did not execute and had some slumps at times this season. Not really Diaz so much, but Nimmo had some ups and downs this season. Lindor, he had some ups and downs as well this season, but they all finished with strong seasons. And we as Mets fans, I would say that most of us Mets fans definitely want to see all these players back. Pete already opted out of his contract. We'll get more into that momentarily. Diaz is going to consult with his family. More on that momentarily as well. Before Diaz makes a decision, I mean. There's plenty of finger pointing to go around for the reasoning behind this dip. The MLB best rotation took a massive decline. As they lost Griffin Canning, Frankie Montas, and Tyler McGill to injuries. Clay Holmes hit his career high in innings. David Peterson was unable to maintain his all-star form, and both Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea struggled upon returning from the IL. Youngsters Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, and Jonah Tong provided a late-season boost, but it wasn't enough. That's John Flanagan, SNY. And that really does tell the story of the 2025 New York Mets. Again, the starting rotation just was not consistent enough throughout the season, and certainly not in the last 4 months. And even the trade deadline reinforcements came around to backfire on David Stearns. Cedric Mullins never found footing in the Big Apple. Ryan Helsley was a nightmare before settling into a groove. too little, too late, I would say, on that front. And Gregory Soto was inconsistent down the stretch. In the end, it's just an unfortunate result for a $340 million team that got off to a terrific start. Again, John Flanagan, SNY. At the time of the trades, it seemed like the consensus was among Mets fans and even some of the pundits in sports media and baseball media that the Mets made solid moves. If you look at the career numbers for the players the Mets acquired, that was very promising. It just did not work out. And unfortunately, in baseball and sports, it's a results-driven business. And the responsibility falls, of course, on the players, but also on the coaches and management to some degree. And there's lots of hard reflection, if you will, going to be needed to be done by Mets management on the field in terms of the coaches and manager, and also in terms of the front office, GM. There's just, everyone has to look in the mirror, and there's going to be a lot of analysis to do in terms of figuring out what can be done to fix this team moving forward and just improve the team. Does it need to be fixed? Is fix the right words? Are they a broken team, or did they just not execute it and then need some tweaks around the edges? But I would say that everything is really on the table in terms of what changes the Mets will be looking at this offseason. Let's take a look at some more things here. As you can see here, this is the breaking news. It happened a little while ago. As he talked to the media in the aftermath of the loss today, Met All-Star first baseman Pete Alonso is opting out of his contract and will enter free agency, he said, after New York's final game of the season. Yeah, so we're going to be in for some more Pete drama coming this offseason. Hold on, buckle up, everybody, certainly on that front. This is a graphic that is a very telling and perhaps traumatizing to some Mets fans. Mets Up podcast here posted this. It's a graphic here. As you can see, all these games were tight games, or the Mets were way ahead, or very winnable games. Just a bunch of games that the Mets let slip through their fingers on, and you guys can screen. You guys can pause this and take a closer look if you like. But I thought this was worth sharing. It just kind of goes to show that, today was a huge disappointment and a nail in the coffin of the season, and even more disappointing knowing that the Brewers won and the Reds lost. So the Mets did have their own destiny in their hands. But it came down to not just today. It came down to all these games and other games. And, I've been talking about the stat every video I've recorded, talking about the Mets just have no comebacks after being down 8 innings this season. Just, again, they didn't execute. They were not a clutch team overall. They didn't get it done. Pete Alonso says he will opt out and become a free agent this offseason on his future with the Mets, playing for this organization, this city. They've continued to believe in me. I love playing here. There's some great guys in the clubhouse, some great people on the staff. Every single day, it's been a pleasure to come work, and it's a pleasure coming to work and putting on the orange and blue. I've really appreciated it and have been nothing but full of gratitude every single day. Nothing is guaranteed, but we'll see what happens. I loved being a Met. Hopefully they've appreciated me the same. I don't love how he's talking in the past tense there. That certainly makes me nervous as a Mets fan. That's going to be an uphill battle, an uphill challenge to re-sign him, to extend him, to bring him back on whatever contract that makes him and the Mets happy on both sides. We're in for a little an adventure this offseason in terms of the Pete Alonso free agency period. They better sign him. That's all I'm gonna say. You can't let the franchise. That's Tom Seaver's nickname, of course, was Tom Seaver's nickname. But you can't let a franchise cornerstone like Pete Alonso, the all-time leader in home runs, just walk. I mean, God forbid if he goes to the Yankees or a division rival. That would just be very sad and epically terrible for the Mets. So I'm crossing my fingers that the Mets will be able to re-sign Pete, and he will be a Met for his entire career and be a productive one at that. I think his defense is actually underrated. The man scoops out pretty much every ball out of the dirt. Pete better stay. Keep Pete. Sign Pete. Whatever the slogan we're going to be going with is, I'm going to continue to be repeating that. No pun intended. The Mets have absolutely no plans to fire Carlos Mendoza off this collapse, as they shouldn't. Beyond that, it gets interesting. We'll write something this evening. That's Andy Martino reporting that the Mets will keep Carlos Mendoza. Things can change, news can change, plans can change. It's interesting that he says as they should. And he's got to throw in that little editorial point there. If you go to this tweet, this post on X, and look at some of the comments, they do not agree. a lot of the public does not agree with this plan, apparently, that the Mets have to retain Mendoza. Plenty more on Mendoza's performance and the potential of him leaving the team or staying. To come here on Mets Digest, this is the official, so to speak, news posted by Laura Albanese that Edwin Diaz will speak with his family before deciding if he'll opt out. So maybe he can stay without having to renegotiate a new contract, and they better keep him too. He was, in some ways, the best player on. He's right up there with Soto and Alonzo in terms of their productivity this season and how great their individual seasons were. But again, as a team, the Mets failed this season. They did not get it done. Hope everyone's hanging in there. Hope you guys are doing okay. Let's just breathe, try to enjoy football, maybe take a break from watching baseball itself. I'm giving this is, again, I said I'd offer some therapy to Mets fans. But let me know what you think. What are you doing to stay positive? Hang in there. Who are you firing? Who are you trading? Who are you getting rid of? Who do you want to get? How can you fix the Mets? How can you improve them? Sad ending to the season. Wish I was recording a video right now that was much happier and a playoff preview for the Mets at versus the Dodgers, but that's not the case. But yeah, it's been a, I don't know if it's been a fun season. It's been an interesting season. At least it's been a competitive season. To give some perspective, there's been many seasons where the Mets were mathematically eliminated, or so it seemed, in May or June. So even though things seem dark right now, I guess it's good to appreciate that, at least in this new era of ownership, that the Mets will going to be trying their darndest the ownership is going to be trying its hardest, its darndest to put a competitive team on the field. But let me know what you think about all these topics. Go wherever you want. Drop a comment below and like, subscribe, do all the things, and let's go Mets.